Hello, and welcome to this episode 185 of Frame and Reference. You're about to drop into a conversation between me, Kenny McMillan, and my guest Sam Davis, DP of The Singers, as well as Didi, which we're talking about right now. Enjoy. Yeah, man, you guys absolutely great. Killed that movie.
Thank you. Hey, we had no expectations of that movie getting, the exposure that it ended up having. I think it was, if you had told us before we shot that, the best thing that would come from it was premiering at Sundance, we would have lost our minds, Right. So, just kind of continued to surprise us and give and give and give. And, it was sort of the indie dream.
Yeah. Well, and the fun part for me was, I think me and my sister went and saw it, and we're both from Napa Valley. Okay. And so that entire Bay Area experience, obviously we're not Asian, but that whole experience resonated so aggressively with us, down to the attention to detail was crazy. The radio station that they're listening to in the car was Live 105. That was the one.
That's amazing.
Even that.
I'm from Michigan. I never knew that was a specific detail. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
We were literally, me and my sister started shaking each other. They're like, they fucking nailed it. They didn't know anything about it.
It's amazing.
What was the director, Shang?
Sean Wong.
Sean Wong.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was from Fremont or anything, so we were just in cold.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and did you also grow up shooting skate stuff and stuff? Because I know David's.
No, not at all. I wasn't a skater. I grew up. I'm from a small town. I heard you talking about being from a small town. Also, from a small town in Michigan, outside of Lansing, 1,500 people or so. And I just grew up. I wasn't necessarily steeped in the arts as a kid. I think I'm a bit of a unique case in that sense. I didn't see The Godfather until I was at USC, at 23, 24 years old. Yeah. But that just wasn't a thing. My parents, pretty sort of it was a cliched Midwestern upbringing. My dad is a teacher and football coach. And actually the first films I made were with the high school football program video camera. So I'd steal that, it would be laying around and go make little movies with my friends and stuff. And just kind of started from there. And it really at a pretty young age that I wanted to be a filmmaker. So kind of dedicated my life to it even though that wasn't a thing where I grew up, it's not a thing that you did, pursue the arts, pursue a career in the arts. And, but I did because I had supportive parents,
Right.
And here I am.
Yeah, did the because small towns I've always described. I got to stop dropping this pen. Small towns tend to have what I call the crab bucket mentality. You may have heard, where it's anytime anyone tries to do anything that goes against the kind of what tends to be, at least around our age, kind of a sad, trying to escape the crab bucket. They want to pull you back in. So if you want to get into the arts or whatever, generally in these smaller towns, the community around you will be don't try to be cool. Don't try. Did you experience that, or
I didn't necessarily feel? No, I didn't experience that. I just experienced that there was a sense that I was doing something that, there weren't models, before me from my hometown and going to Hollywood or, pursuing a career in film or the arts. I didn't really experience any resistance from the community. Everyone was actually pretty supportive where I'm from. So but my parents especially, really supported, really encouraged my brother and sister and I all to kind of pursue whatever we wanted, even if it was outside the box.
Did all three of you end up going to arts, or was it engineer?
Yeah, my brother's a sports broadcaster. He's the voice of the Dodgers, actually.
No shit.
Team. Yeah. So, and my sister's a writer. She's writing a book right now, and she's the youngest of the three. But we sort of joke that we were the three forms of word: written word, picture word, and spoken word. we kind of cover the gamut
So
as siblings, and which is bizarre considering where we're from.
you guys need to get like a big statue of the like the three monkey, the hear no evil, see no evil monkeys.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the three of y'all.
In our hometown, right next to the one stoplight and the bar.
Yeah. Oh my god, dude. Speaking of the something you'll know of me is I'm gonna jump around a lot. But in the Singers, that bar you guys shot
Yeah.
in reminds me
Mhm.
so much of the one bar where I grew up with
Really?
all the including all the dollars on the ceiling. Except
Oh,
the
that's
ceiling's
amazing.
way up there. It's like a 2.5 story building that's all air.
Oh, cool. How do
But
they
yeah,
get them up there?
I think I always wondered as a kid, and then I think they told me, I could be making this up, but I'm pretty sure they said that people would like put like a thumbtack in the dollar, and then put
Mm.
like a roll of not a roll, but like maybe like a couple quarters behind the thumbtack, and then twist it up,
Yeah.
and then just
Oh, okay.
spike it, and then when it hit the
Really?
ceiling, they'd all come out.
That's amazing.
That's I
Yeah,
don't know. I
yeah.
don't know who came
It
up
was a
with
good
that.
location. Good
Yeah.
location. Lot of help from the art department to kind of make it what it is. Like the dollar bills weren't there before we shot.
Oh no
So
shit.
there was, yeah, there's a lot of work that went into it, but it was filled with like LED screens and Club Kino, like very modern sort of lots of TV screens, and we felt like those sort of broke the spell. So we took like half a day to just remove all the modern tech and kind of send it back in time.
Yeah. Where'd you all film that?
La Habra, outside
Oh.
of LA, the La Habra Moose Lodge. They were great. First time they had allowed anyone to film there, and maybe the last. We'll see. Um, but yeah, no, they were really accommodating. Let us come in, kind of take over the space for a few days, which was great because with a contained short like that, I mean, you really need to be able to kind of like hunker down. We were able to walk away at the end of the day and just kind
Right.
of live there for a few days.
So for that I was sent the deck. Obviously I watched the short,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
there none of that was all like first time actors, first no script. You just
Hmm.
like found it on the day. I assume there
Yeah,
was an
well,
outline.
so there was an outline in that the film was based on a short story that was written in 1850 by a Russian writer named Ivan Turgenev. And I came upon the story in a book called Swim in a Pond in the Rain by George Saunders.
Mm.
It's like a sort of storytelling book that came out just a few years ago. And I I read the story and was just inspired by it. Generally, I liked it and thought, I wonder if that could be a film someday. I think it's specifically inspired by just like I think the theme of like diamonds in the rough and all these sort of crusty old souls in a bar revealing themselves as these amazing talents. And then and also the idea of like just vulnerability and connection through art, I
Mm.
think stood out to me. So it kind of got me, I read it before I went to bed. And when I went to go to sleep, I just like checked my phone, and as I often do, sort of went into like a little internet wormhole where I was looking. The first thing I saw was a viral video of Mike, who ultimately would play the bartender, singing in the subway station in New York. And I kind of like, I watched it and I was like, oh my God, this guy's incredible. I didn't really put the pieces together. And I just like scrolled a couple more videos, and I must have been on like some viral video singing sensation algorithm or something. And a couple videos later, um, there was a video of Judah, who plays he's the Australian guy who won The Voice Australia. And I started thinking, what if we did like a modern adaptation of this story, but all the guys in the bar are these unknown but insane singing talents. And how cool would that be if we sort of intermeshed this, hundreds-year-old story with like these, TikTok stars. And the idea was kind of born out of that. And then I was up for hours after that, just continuing to find, not only singers but people like Tio Rigo, who who dances in the middle of the film. He just kind of stands up out of the blue and starts dancing. He has a viral TikTok channel and Instagram channel where he and his friend make these fun dancing videos. So yeah, the idea was kind of born out of that moment.
So, uh, yeah, again, I'm trying to go linearly here. So talking, because I'm just excited about the idea of like, how do you talk to all these people, day of, but starting off with like pre-production on that, like you have the idea, you're directing and shooting it and editing it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, like how did you sort of decide, like, all right, it's easy to say I want to make that, but like what were some of those first steps? Like true steps.
First steps were casting, really. I spent like over a year, just trying, because there's one thing to find these guys on YouTube or TikTok, Instagram, but all of them were like, you know, undiscovered talents, really. There were these guys who, maybe posted videos to their social medias, but weren't like, they certainly didn't have agents. They were difficult to track down. Which in a way was exactly the type of personality we were looking for, because that was the whole point. We wanted these to be sort of these diamonds in the rough, and it took a long time. It took over a year probably just to make contact with, and we were looking at different pairings of people. It wasn't that were exclusively going after the few videos that caught my eye the night I read the short story, but we spent months and months and months. I worked with a casting director, Natalie Lynn, who cast Didi. She's a friend of mine, really talented, and she has a gift for connecting with real people, non-actors, first-time actors. And yeah, we worked together to sort of curate this list of people who are, a mix of singing talents and also just interesting personalities. Like Muffin, a guy who's sort of a heckler at the end of the bar. He became a bit of an antagonist in the film when we shot. We found him because someone posted a video of him. He's from Arkansas, this tiny little town in Arkansas. But a friend of his posted a video of him just like ranting at a hardware store. And we contacted the hardware store and we're like, is there any way you could help us get in touch with this guy? Because I saw the video and I was like, man, if I had this guy in the room, the whole idea was just about sort of like curated chaos. It was like, what will happen if we get, we have this core idea of like I said earlier, a group of men who are at a bar and they sort of like have this impromptu connection through singing. But what would happen if we found all these real people and sort of threw them in a pot, like ingredients, pot being this little bar in La Habra for a few days, with an outline, a very, very loose semblance of a script. And yeah, so it was just about sort of wrangling all these guys and getting them in one place. And hopefully, there would be some magic that came from that, because I'm really interested in like synthesizing my background in documentary with narrative filmmaking, and what is the, what kind of unwritable stuff will emerge, as specifically in dialogue. Like there was no dialogue written in advance. We had the core idea, but all the dialogue, because it was improvised on the spot, I think feels very true to each person in the film, because there was stuff that I would never have written. They were just speaking in their own voice, and it was this interesting sort of live collaboration, almost like a uh, improvisational stage play or something, where we'd be talking about this specific story beat that we were shooting, but the words themselves would come from that person who was, in the midst of being featured in their first ever film, and all they knew how to do was be themselves, whether they were from Arkansas or Australia or the subway station in New York where where Mike busks. They all came from such different worlds, and hopefully, that kind of breathed like a documentary spirit into the film, even though at its, when you look at it finished, it's very much a narrative. It's very much a piece of fiction. So hopefully there's a lot of truth in it.
Yeah, the what's the phrase? The lie that tells the truth. Filmmaking.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're reaching out to these people, are you telling them like, hey, I don't really have a script, but I'd like to put you in a movie, or how do you pitch that to them?
Yeah. Honestly, most of them were very trusting. They took leaps, all of them. No one, because they're not professional, I don't even know if they knew to ask for a script. There wouldn't have been one had they asked, but in this case, they, yeah, they were usually very curious, and most of them, not all of them, we actually cast someone in one of the main roles who was on board until like the day before we shot, and ultimately got cold feet and didn't make the trip. And so we had to sort of scramble and pivot. And that's sort of like the risk that you take when you make a movie like this. It was bound to happen. We knew it was. Some of those big bets that we took paid off in big ways, and others, failed. And but I think beautiful stuff emerged even from those sort of last minute pivots. No one asked for a script really. I would talk to them about like the style, like, give them a visual of what to expect and in making the film, and tell them. I think maybe people were relieved to know that there wasn't a script, because I would tell them, I just want you to show up and be you, and I'll walk you through it in the moment. We'll talk through it. It's very collaborative, and in a sense, that's comforting to, I think, a first time performer.
Yeah, I'm shooting this for lack of a better term, it's a corporate thing, but it's more fun. It's for a company called Death and Co. Who now I know those guys listen because I filmed for them. So hi guys. But one thing that I ran into with them a lot was they'll script stuff for themselves because they have to be very professional, and then that takes a lot of effort to like, because they want to hit all the words correctly. So I can see how, especially in something like a narrative, that which can be even more frightening, just kind of being like, here's the gist, do what you would do.
Yeah.
Probably does feel a lot better.
Yeah, working in documentary too, it's a little taboo, I guess, to talk about, but even in documentary, like you're working with real people, and hopefully you're capturing truth on some level, but like people are always performing in a sense, so even as a documentarian, when I'm shooting a film, a doc, I'm thinking about how to set this real person up to be as real as they can be on camera. And whether that's where I put the camera or how I interact with them, between shots, or an idea I give them about something to talk about in order to stir up a conversation. It's Yeah, it's all about setting people up for success, whether they're trained actors or not. And in this case, it was just about how can we make these non-actors act as little as possible, and just be themselves, and that's where the magic would come from.
Yeah, the nope, lost that thought. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. How so you have them all improving and you're
Mhm.
shooting film.
Yeah,
How many that feels like a scary combo because now
dude, the
because
whole thing was
improv
scary.
well yeah but like improv lives digital was probably the greatest gift to
Mhm.
improv. I was about to say improv comics, but
Mhm.
improv in general.
Yeah.
So how many takes were you kind of allowing these guys to like find it, or were you just rehearsing like crazy and going, you know what, we're going to go with that, just try to
No,
say that again?
we didn't honestly, we didn't really rehearse, because so much of it was sort of improv in the moment. Um and that was part of it too, was like, we're gonna take all these risks. We're gonna cast all these people who don't know how to act. And on top of that, we're gonna shoot it in the most sort of crafted, heightened, cinematic way possible, difficult way possible. And also there was something I loved about, like, to take a bunch of viral video, America's Got Talent, whatever, stars, and photograph them in a way that feels very reverent and important. I thought that was, I was really inspired by that idea, because I think the filmmaker says I think you feel the filmmaker's love for like a subject or a person, or when you can feel the level of thought and intention that went into putting that, bringing that image to life. And but yeah, it's very difficult to say because we most of everything we did was sort of like, there's something I do when I shoot docs on film where I'm kind of just mentally editing, and like a take could go on for a long time and I might be rolling and cutting and rolling and cutting 6 times within a take. As far as they know, they think they're on the entire time. But when it starts to meander and I don't like where it's going, I'm cutting because I can't afford to continue rolling. But I would do that. We would run long takes, almost like you would if you were shooting digital, but maybe only 30% of it would actually be recorded on camera, and sound would continue to roll. It's a nightmare, obviously, for an assistant editor who has to sync. But I don't believe in slating in my like the way I do
You
these
don't
like
believe in
hybrid
slating?
projects. No, it's a hot take. I know I'll
Hot
be
take.
crucified for this, but when I direct a project, whether it's a doc, especially docs on film, really any doc, even a digital doc, or something hybrid like this, I don't slate at all because there's nothing more precious than like this specific moment that we're capturing. And if that means I have to slave for, you know, a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, to manually go through and sync all this stuff, I'll do it because there's nothing less natural to especially a first time actor than like clapping at something in front, or a documentary subject even more so than clapping sticks or your hands even in front of their face and saying action before you ask them to just be themselves and try to convince themselves that they're not in a movie. It doesn't add up to me. So I suffer it. I accept the consequences of not having that convenience of time code or slating. And there's a real fluidity that I feel in working this way that feels more documentary. Um, so it will drive assistant editors and sound people and all kinds of people up. It'll drive everyone crazy, but that's I found to be kind of a hack for my workflow specifically.
Sure. I mean, I fully get that on set, but yeah, I do. Well, I guess you edited it, so who cares? But yeah, if I was handing that in, that would be a
Yeah,
fireable
no,
offense.
it's annoying for sure to have to sync that stuff, but it is possible.
Because obviously, there's
You're
no
not so
for.
much
I was going to say for folks that don't know, there's obviously no sound on the film, so you can't just right
correct.
click auto
Yeah,
sync audio.
right, right. I mean, shooting docs, and I shoot a lot of documentaries on film, is even crazier than shooting, a narrative short like The Singers, even though that was pretty improvisational. Shooting docs on film is, yeah, it is a behemoth task to sync verite documentary footage with no reference, but we do it.
Yeah, so what? I mean, this is a dumb question, but what draws you to film so much? Obviously,
Mm,
for doc, and I mean, film as a medium, like because
yeah.
for doc, you know, there's usually no budget. You
Mhm.
have to work quickly. Anything that can be, I suppose, automated or whatever, generally people will gladly take. So, what kind of started your sort of career with film, since that seems to be your
Mhm.
weapon of choice?
Yeah, well, I think I entered into the film industry, into documentary specifically, in a moment where, like, up until around the time I graduated from film school in 2016,
And you went to SC?
I went to USC.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it felt like up until that time, documentaries were primarily motion picture journalism. It was about getting into the can. That's all that mattered. There was no sound design. I remember sound designing a doc in school, and asking to get into panning with my sound mixer, who was a professional mixer, and he was like, "We don't like you don't pan in a documentary." And but around the time I graduated, I think there was a bit of a renaissance in documentary. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was Chef's Table or a number of Netflix series that came out and they were like pretty polished and they were like really good looking, not just visually, great sounding, music, everything, really slick, really cinematic documentary films. And I happened to graduate. Up until that point, all I was interested in was narrative filmmaking. The first thing I did when I graduated was a short documentary called Period End of Sentence that went on to win an Oscar, and that sort of shifted my
Casual.
career trajectory. Yeah, sort of
First thing
shifted
out.
my, I know, a blessing and a curse. It
Oh,
sort
I
of shifted
bet.
my career trajectory toward
And that wasn't sarcastic. I
toward
mean, like,
documentary.
to have your first thing win an Oscar, that sets the
Yeah, yeah,
bar
yeah,
pretty fucking high for
totally.
ostensibly a
Yeah,
newbie.
it did, and also like it it pigeonholed me
Yeah,
instantly into doing that specific type of documentary.
sure.
Not only documentary, but like female empowerment documentary. That was my thing for a very long time.
Mm.
And but all that to say, I think I entered into documentary in a moment where we were starting to embrace that. If I hadn't, I don't know if I would have continued to be inspired to make docs because I had all these skills that I had learned in film school, and really I'm an artist. Like that's why I became a filmmaker, not to carry around a camera, and that's not to take anything away from the sort of journalistic, minimalist
Well, but
handy cam
that's
documentary. That's its
journalism.
own thing, right? And it's very important. And films like Navalny, for example, those are incredible films. Not really the type of thing that I'm interested in personally. I want to add value to a story by using my creative eye and filmmaking mind to immerse audiences in it. And film, when it comes to film, it I wouldn't shoot every documentary on film. It would be a mistake to shoot. There are a lot of docs like Navalny. You could never shoot that film on film. It wouldn't make sense. But there are some films that I think deserve a certain amount of intentionality, um, and reverence that film can lend a subject matter. Like I was saying before, like you say so much about your um, appreciation for or your sense of importance of a subject by putting it up on a pedestal and going that extra mile to capture images on celluloid, in my opinion. And there was a film, one of the first docs I shot on film was called Long Line of Ladies, and it was a New York Times op doc, a short documentary about a Native American coming of age ceremony for girls. And it was something that had never been photographed before. It was very, very precious, very delicate to even for them to have even allowed us to come in and make this film. And we talked about like rethinking Native American people that had been exploited, on film from the beginning of documentary filmmaking. And we talked about
And
sort of like
fucking narrative.
reclaiming that. Exactly,
Look at all the
exactly.
cowboy films.
Right. We talked about sort of like reclaiming that, could we sort of like reclaim that format and do it the right way and do it with purpose and ask permission as we went, and rather than just hosing it down as you would with a digital camera so often. And so, I think that was the first thing that kind of got me into that space. And I kind of caught this bug where I feel it's a sweet spot for me to be making images and telling stories that feel very crafted, very thoughtful, respectful, um, have the production value of an and level of immersiveness as a narrative feature might, but you're telling a true story. And of course, like you're gonna roll out at the worst times sometimes. There are definitely drawbacks. But I think, like I said, that the weight that some can lend a story can can be really valuable for it and really like uplift a project.
Absolutely. I'm wondering, you mentioned like when did we start churching up docs, and I'm
Mhm.
wondering if it was
Yeah.
a kind of a response to the Vice era of
Mm,
like
maybe.
getting everything out there, and
Yeah.
the bad side of all those Vice docs was how much ungraded log footage
Oh my God.
fucking defined an era of people like, no, 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 we want it to be raw. It's like, not
I've
literally,
seen
like,
so many of
ugh.
those where I was like, oh my God, I wish I had been there to direct this piece, and because the access is that's everything for those
Yeah.
films, right? Is access, but the craft was not necessarily there.
Yeah, I mean those that whole era of for them was awesome, but
Hmm.
I don't know how everyone there watched hours and hours and hours of S-Log 3 footage and just went like, yeah, 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 this is good. My eyes don't hurt at all.
Amazing. I got to look back at some of those.
I mean, I remember a bunch of them just like really, and then I think that would have been when me and David were in college, the producer of
Okay.
the singers, but
Hmm.
for people, uh, I'm actually wearing my Kodak shirt when I went to.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Love it.
I wanted to
Did you
buy
go to the
one.
Kodak Awards?
Yeah, so I went there and I wanted to buy one of the Kodak House T-shirts, and they were like, "Ah,
Mhm.
we don't have them in your size." And so the guy went in the back and then brought out like this one from Korea, and was like, "You can have this." And I was like, "Oh, sick!"
It's
Because there's
amazing.
only a handful. And I was like, "Awesome."
I watched Trap recently. Did you see that film?
Trap?
Mhm.
No, I don't
The
think
M.
so.
Night Shyamalan.
Oh no, I didn't. No,
Okay. Well, there's a
but
scene in it specifically about going in the back and grabbing another T-shirt.
oh,
Um, but you can cut that part out.
that nothing gets cut from this unless it's NDA'd or that's usually about it. Or someone needs to go get water. Uh, I think a lot of people would love to shoot film more.
Mhm.
I remember the Kodak Awards last year. Hoyta came out and was, or no, maybe it was the Oscars that last year, but whatever it was,
Yeah.
he was like, "Hey, everyone." He said it at the Kodak Awards too, but he was like, go out and shoot film. It's easy, blah blah blah. And I remember a few friends of mine were kind of mad at him for that because they're like, "It's not that
Mhm.
simple."
Mhm.
And in some ways it is, some ways it isn't. I priced it out and I found that like for a a fashion film I did, a little 3 minute
Mhm.
whatever, it would have been roughly the same price for me to shoot the cameras that I own and do all that and like rent it,
Mhm.
than it would be to go buy or rent like a SR2 or whatever and like get the full
Okay.
stock. And so for you with a lot of experience, what does the
Mhm.
process of shooting film look like, on a nuts and bolts level? Like, are you reaching out to Kodak and saying like, can you help
Mhm.
us out? Are you just,
Yeah.
what does that whole process from soup to nuts look like?
Well, because I shoot so much film, I have a really good relationship at Kodak, specifically Kodak Atlanta. I run a lot of my projects through Kodak Atlanta. I don't shoot in LA very much. Unfortunately, I think a lot of us could say that. And
I don't, and I
be
live here.
right. Because of that, I'm gonna be in most cases I'm gonna be shipping the film to a lab anyway. So it doesn't matter to me that it's in Atlanta. I'm either gonna, ship it or fly it back to LA or send it to Atlanta. No, they've been great supporters of my projects. What they do, a lot of the times is they'll give, friendly rates on film stock in exchange for processing and scanning with them. So you can
Mm.
make personal relationships with these labs and, they appreciate your continued business and they'll help you. They want to see you continue to shoot film. So, um, yeah, I have some great resources that have enabled me to do these projects on film. But aside from, you know, needing to purchase raw stock, which gets shipped to wherever I'm shooting or sometimes wherever I'm prepping, and obviously, shipping the footage back out to have it developed and scanned. The process isn't terribly different for me. I meter, when I'm shooting film, obviously. I don't meter when I'm shooting digitally.
I still do.
Um,
I'm
you do.
paranoid. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
paranoid.
That's probably good practice, honestly. For
Well, and
me,
you don't
I've
have to
just,
get Video Village up, right?
that's
Because
true.
the stakeholders always want to watch you do it. And so if I'm just sitting there with the
Hmm.
meter, me and the gaffer, in our little huddle,
Hmm.
hey, can we see it? I'm like, yeah, 1 second. But then when they do see it, it's ready versus, and then they
Right,
can
right.
nitpick and it's actual nitpicking and not like, oh, is that going to be that? You're like, we haven't put up the light, there isn't any of
Hmm.
that.
Hmm. Yeah,
My,
for me, I've gotten into a rhythm of like the way I meter because I shoot irritated docs on film is always really from camera. I exclusively spot meter and because I'm usually operating. So like it's
Zone
this
system, baby.
frantic thing where I'm like, yeah, I'm like shaking, and because I'm running around, I'm exhausted, and I'm just taking sort of a bit of an average of the shot because it has to be very quick, and I check my meter pretty compulsively. But shooting docs on film has been an incredible school in celluloid for me. I feel like I can work so quickly in a narrative environment, having that experience and just that level of comfort in terms of like how far I can push it and what things I need to be concerned about and what things I don't. So it's been a really good way to cut my teeth on film.
Yeah. Do you are you just kind of like putting skin at key and just hoping for the best, or like have you built kind of a system for yourself when shooting
On
doc on film?
documentaries, because usually doc stuff is not lit. I think I used to be more concerned about highlights. I would always negotiate between windows and faces quite a bit. And more, I just like I like what happens with highlights when film not blows out, but when it's hot.
Yeah.
And so more and more I've come to really trust the general, I think faces are the main thing that I'm looking at when I'm metering for film on documentaries. And obviously considering the mood of the scene in a really quick way, a narrative, like we break these things down and we talk at length about the exact tone we want to accomplish with this in verite documentary. It's like you just really have to be in tune with it. And I listen to the dialogue. If the subjects are too far away, I get their logs so I can kind of hear the tone of something. But yeah, it's really quick bop, 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 check the highlights, check the shadows, check the faces and mids. Um, or maybe it's like a silhouette scene, and that's fine too. Um,
I remember being at in film school before college.
mhm,
We were shooting 16, and
mhm,
the common wisdom was that we had about 3 stops in either direction off a key. Is that
mhm.
is that? But we weren't. I don't think we were shooting 5219 at the time when we shot color. I think it would have been. It might have been something else. This is like oh
Yeah,
08, 07, 08.
yeah,
Is that still the kind of the common wisdom, or have? Because when I was talking to, I bring up Eigel a lot, but only because or I wouldn't say he's like a friend of mine. He's like a good
mhm,
acquaintance of mine. Um,
yeah.
but he shot the holdovers, and we talk about film a lot, and sometimes with DM and shit. But
Such a good
um,
looking movie.
it looks so good. But digital. But one point that he has said, that this has come up a bunch of times when I talked. Like I think I brought it up when I was talking to Jaron, which was the 5219 is so nice. Like it's grainless.
Mhm.
It's got so much latitude that it's almost like shooting digital anyway. So yeah, the question being, do you, how much latitude do you have on modern film stocks? As because obviously on digitally you've got, depending on the camera, 8 stops
Mhm.
in either direction.
Yeah, yeah. I think probably um, definitely not 8 stops, but I mean there's a lot of latitude there, and like I said, um I find myself, even with highlights and stuff, being kind of on the borderline. It just does magical stuff on the negative that you don't get in digital. Even if there's like a window that's nuclear behind someone's head, the way it halates around their face, or so I find myself being pretty comfortable, plus or minus um 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So
I
how
did.
about you?
I haven't been able to shoot film in forever. Now, whenever
Okay.
I shoot a lot of medium format stills. Again, not recently,
Mhm.
but if I'm shooting 35 or like half, I have a little half frame camera.
Mhm.
I literally just meter the face, and then everything else is up to God. You
Yeah.
know, for stills.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
That's kind of the way you have to work in docs.
yeah. But I did want to kind of narrow in on, because you were saying like you had a great relationship with Kodak Atlanta and all this. But
Yeah.
what was that first, that first gig that you shot on film? Were you shooting on film in college and that kind of dovetailed into that relationship, or what were those first initial conversations that led to that relationship?
Yeah, not really. I actually started a project 5 years ago that's all shot on film. It's a documentary. And at the time it was like a total experiment. We're like, what if we yeah, most verite docs are, an experiment until you shoot and you work with the subject a little bit, and see if there's enough meat there. And this one in particular was instantly special. And so we've continued to film, and we're still filming 5 years later. We have two years to go.
Good
And
heavens.
that project, no one has seen it yet, but that project has sort of defined my relationship with the labs, and also just like my experience and understanding with the format in shooting film, especially docs on film. The projects that I shot on film that you have seen were because I was able to show this as sort of like a proof of concept, even though no one else has seen it yet,
Mm.
privately. So, and with this project, it's been really fun because we're sort of the film negative format is expanding as the story goes. So it's all on film, but we started on 16, and it's sort of like Boyhood. Like you see this kid grow up on screen. It's a doc though. And when we started, it was 16 is like this really sort of artsy home video, sort of nostalgic, hyper nostalgic look. And then when he entered high school, we went to 2 per 35. And then when he was a junior in high school, which is coming up soon, we'll switch to 3 per and then 4 per when he's a senior in high school. And then the movie will be over. But the film negative format sort of expands to fit him, to accommodate him as he grows. And also just like I think on a more subconscious level, like the stakes of the story sort of and the clarity of it all coming into focus, the image gets bigger as time goes on. But with that project, we were able to say like, hey, we're gonna buy like 500,000 feet of film from you and process over the next, X amount of years. Like, will you be a partner, for, along this? And so the relationship came out of that, and then, just continued to build it through other projects. And yeah, I think you have to kind of point to examples of things in your career, especially when you're, pretty early on in your career, like I am, to point to the thing, even if they haven't come out yet. You can use those as tools to prove concepts or skills or big risks to other collaborators.
Yeah. So, talk to me about lighting the
Hmm.
bar in the singers, because
Mm.
I noticed, uh, a lot of obviously backlight, almost spotlight in some cases,
Mhm.
but kind of what was your? It's nice, I assume, to have a one location short because
Yeah,
you can take the time to like just light the whole thing and then let it ride. But kind of
right.
walk me through your process of, because it's like it's a when people, there's a lot of people on the internet who are like, oh, movies don't look like movies anymore, and I think what they really mean is that things look polished.
Mm.
Not that your film doesn't look polished, but I think just that kind of willingness to lean into shadow and
Mm.
not clean up, not hit it with the dustbuster, let
Right.
it let the negative be its sort of true self, as it were. I think that's kind of
Yeah,
an aesthetic that
especially
people
for a
seem to like.
short. Right. Especially for a short, it's like, why shoot on film if you're not going to embrace that stuff?
Yeah.
And 35 too, I think 35 is like, I've heard some filmmakers say like 35, it could almost be digital, or I disagree, but I understand the concept there that you have a good amount of resolution. So it's not like 16 where the look is very in your face. But
Right.
um, we lit the bar. We used a lot of skip bounce off of the bar. That became a big part of the look. I think we really wanted to accentuate the wrinkles and the texture in these guys' faces. All like we talked about earlier, they were all very carefully curated because of their stories, but also because of their faces and sort of memorable qualities of them. Whether it was like the tattoos on their faces, or the dark shadows, or the way their eyes. One of them has like a white eye. We just wanted all these pretty severe looks, and we knew early on that like if we were to use a lot of skip bounce, it would accentuate those the wrinkles and the sort of like the weatheredness of these faces. But also there's something like really beautiful about it because the way, I don't know, the way a skip bounce, spreads across it's very glowy too. So I think we were able to achieve both of those things, really accentuating their, the contrast and texture in the faces, but also channeling something that felt a little heightened. We wanted it to feel fable-esque, wanted it to feel like it could be anywhere, almost any time. Um, yeah, and so it was a lot of that, and we weren't afraid of like, some hard backlights. And Will specifically plays at the piano, and we just bathed him in like the hardest light. And it's pretty spicy, and it kicks the light. I love the way the light kicks around the piano keys, and the front of the piano and back into his face. And it's really film at its finest there, I think. It was also the only scene that we shot handheld in the movie because his voice specifically was just like his voice is like a cement mixer or something. It's just so raspy and almost like a young Tom Waits. And it just felt, when he started to sing, it just felt like we had to pop the camera off and let that be the one, sort of untethered, very, very gritty and sort of wild. His voice felt too wild for like a very composed frame, like everyone else's.
Yeah. And you also got the cool that only seems to happen on film, which is the like blue look that cigarette smoke has.
Oh, so good.
When
That was my first time. That was my first time kind of discovering, I've seen it before, I think, but like, yeah, this is those prop cigarettes and celluloid. I don't know what it is, but they have a really magical, beautiful, velvety sort of blue quality.
Yeah, that's
Glad you noticed that.
well, and it's at some point someone on the internet was like, why do old sports photos look like that? Why do old sports photos look so cool? And people were like, because the whole place was filled with cigarette smoke. You used to be able to watch a basketball game and just chief darts all day, and so it felt it had that blue ambience.
It was very smoky in that.
The other thing I noticed was, because obviously you're shooting 4:3, which back in the day used to be referred to as the actors format. A lot of really good close up, a lot of close up play for most of it, in a way that made me feel a little. I thought the bar was smaller than it was, but then at a certain point you kick to like a wide of all the tables. I was like, I didn't even know those tables were there,
Right.
And I assume
Part
that
of
was
the
just
part
to
of the
get
thinking there was about sort of isolating, well, a couple things, accentuating those faces and really highlighting telling stories just with these faces, and all this, the sort of like implied experience and stories that they hold, but also sort of like isolating them and making it feel kind of a little claustrophobic and stuffy, and then slowly at very distinct intentional moments we sort of like open up to the rest of the bar and start to connect some of the characters. Part of it was also logistical, like continuity wise, because we were doing it so spontaneously and so improvisationally. It was very difficult to maintain continuity. So to be able to shoot in two shots and singles was crucial.
Sure.
It was interesting because one of the biggest decisions in terms of like the writing of the film was where we placed each person along the bar or in the bar. Because like a certain conversation, half of the dialogue in the beginning of the film is like between two veterans, and that's just because we sat those two veterans next to each other, and they had something to connect on and share with each other, and they started to tell each other their true stories of war, their true experiences. If we hadn't sat them next to each other, that wouldn't have been in the movie at all.
Right.
So it felt like a very high stakes decision, and yet we had no time to really think it through. But I think we did okay
Yeah.
laying it out.
What lenses were you shooting on? Because there's one shot specifically where you get like the whole bar that had a lot of like lens character, but
Yeah.
what was the package you worked with?
We shot on the LT, Acam LT, 3 perf. Um, the lenses were Canon FDs from old fast glass.
Nice.
Yeah. And some of that, the really extreme warping was a post effect. There were a couple of shots that just felt like they needed a little extra, like, I don't know, they felt a little too matter of fact or something. So we tried this certain sort of distortion effect that I think channeled your eye to the right place in the frame and felt vintage and cool in a way.
Yeah. And so with the lighting, I guess the thing I wanted to kind of hone in on, especially because we're talking about film and stuff, is like, what was your shooting stop, and then what were you setting the light to? And with digital, obviously now everyone uses a whack ton of neg, but were you just like not really lighting the space? Were you kind of doing the opposite of what most people say? You know, were you lighting faces and not the spaces?
Probably mostly, yeah, because it was so many singles, like you said. I think it was more about lighting individual shots. I mean, for time's sake and efficiency, we tried to light spaces, but then it was about tweaking for every additional setup within a, sort of series of shots. And I think we shot everything pretty wide open, 284.
We're using LED,
2.8 on average. We actually used a lot of tungsten.
I figured you did.
I love the feeling of tungsten light, especially on film. Just kind of felt right. It's all more analog in a way. But there's some LED in there for sure. Some light mats and tubes and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and you got to keep that bar warm, with it snowing.
It was in the summer too, and we had the fireplace burning. Everybody was in parkas and winter coats, and they were not happy with me.
I did. Oh Jesus, it's already been an hour. It goes so fast. I did want to. It's the thing that.
Kenny, can I just? Sorry to interrupt. Can I just send a quick? I just have to send an email real quick, letting someone know I'm running. I'm going to be running a little late. I want to spend enough time to do final questions, but
no, this is going to be the last question, and you can get out of here.
Cool. Actually, then if that's the case, we'll just power through.
All right. The only thing I was going to ask was, what? How did you get WME involved? And were they the like main producer, or were they like distributing it or something? Because I was like, did they make it? And then no.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's actually Warner Music, not to be confused with WME, the agency.
Oh, sorry, I was thinking Warner Music Entertainment, but that's not it.
Yeah, Warner. Yeah, it is. It's Warner Music Entertainment. They started a film arm recently, I think, in the last couple of years. And my producer, David Burchell, had a connection there and pitched this to them. And, with its sort of, I think they were looking to do something that they could enter into film festivals, because it was a relatively new endeavor for them. And they wanted to, do a project that could, I think, create like a little bit of awareness around their brand, maybe some sort of like festival prestige, try to get into a big festival. And they took a big bet on this, and I'm so happy and lucky that they did, because we wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. There's so many risks, and it was such a big experiment, and they were incredible partners and like really let us kind of do our thing. So yeah, Warner Music was basically the financier of the project, and they've been amazing.
Hell yeah. Well, it's a great little short. I really liked it. I'm sure you'll get a few more nominations for it and all that. And like I said, man, at the head, I fucking love Didi. So
thank you so much.
Great job with that one too.
Appreciate that.
I'll let you go. I also just got an email about reproduction on something. But great talking.
This was fun, Kenny. Yeah, really nice to meet you. Hope we can cross paths again soon.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production, produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to frameandrefpod.com and clicking on the Patreon button. It's always appreciated, and as always, thanks for listening.